Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Talent Gap Fireside Chat, where we talk about causes of and solutions to the talent gap. I'm your host, Pete Strauss, and joining me today is Jit Arora. He is a partner and Not South Europe CISO over at Deloitte. Welcome, Jit.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks for having me here.
Well, thanks for being here. Could you give our audience a little background on yourself and your career thus far?
Yeah, so I'm a background. Basically, started from in infrastructure services, so pretty technical by trade, a Unix administrator. And over the years, I have been working in different roles in security and risk, worked in various banking, financial services institutions mostly. And over the last 6 years, I have been working at Deloitte as North South Europe and UK CISO. And recently, I also picked up additional responsibilities as the Global Deputy CISO. So yeah, it's been a fun ride.
Absolutely. Well, and I imagine you're an extremely busy guy as well. Curious to get your take on the job market across the pond versus here in the U.S. Curious if we're seeing some of the same things.
Yeah, I think the job market, I think it has slowed down a little bit over the last year or so. I think you might have seen, when the COVID hit, obviously there was a big ramp up happen. A lot of technology companies and technology investments were going significantly high, and then recently, unfortunately, a number of companies had to kind of let some of the people go. A lot of restructuring has happened, and as a result of that, I think market has slowed down a little. And also, I think the geopolitical uncertainty and also the political uncertainty, because the elections are happening in some of the major economies, like in India, going on, in US and UK almost imminently. So all of these things are kind of creating a situation in the market where a lot of organizations are not making big investments. So investments are slow, which has kind of impacted the job market. The jobs are still there, but it's not what it was, I think, 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, I think everybody kind of got used to the huge upswing of 2021 coming out of COVID, like you mentioned, and when everything slowed down, all of a sudden nobody, I guess, really saw that coming.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of, I think, reacting to changes in the market, and and a lot of companies making decisions not knowing what the future is going to hold. That's what's so weird about this environment is. Nobody knows what's going to happen, so they just kind of default to either hiring freezes or not doing anything, basically. In a lot of cases, just stay in a holding pattern. And like you said, lots of layoffs happening, especially here in the U.S. and big tech, and tech overall, which has led to a flood of candidates on the market, and companies are not encountering the same challenges in hiring as they did a couple of years ago. Now it's more about sifting through all of the thousands of applicants than trying to target the few people that, I would argue that that's really still a problem, is targeting the few people that are a fit for these jobs. But I think a lot of companies default to just posting a job and praying and, hoping the right person walks through the door. What's your perception of the talent gap, I guess, like in security specifically? Would you say that's a real thing in the UK and Europe?
Yeah, it's quite interesting, Pete, because I see a lot of research which publishes and talks about the amount of cyber jobs available in the market and the talent deficit we have. And then I also speak to a lot of university students. I spend time with the academia quite a lot, trying to help and nurture them. And then you see students who are doing degrees from some of the really reputed institutions, but still struggling to land the job. So these two things are not adding up. So I think while there is definitely a talent deficit which exists, but there are not that many jobs anymore, which is again creating a very reality distortion for the people, because they think there are a lot of jobs available, but they're not getting it. And that creates a lot of frustration. So I do think jobs are there, but maybe some of the studies, the way they are highlighting the amount of jobs are available, I think there is there's some correction needs to be there. And also, whenever we look at the talent, my view is we think about the talent strategy mostly, as you rightly said, hiring experienced people who have got the skills, who have got the knowledge, and kind of as a rotating chair, a revolving doors, we call them. Whereas not looking at the talent strategy as a holistic topic, investing into early careers, giving opportunities to younger talent and bringing them in the industry. So which kind of creates a very interesting dynamics with the new fresh mindset coming in versus experienced people, which I think creates a much better blended experience.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people still quoting IC Squared's numbers from years ago that
I
said
know.
that there's 3.4 million unfilled
Yeah.
security jobs by whatever date. But the
Yeah.
market is certainly not what it once was.
Correct.
And what that number does not take into account, as you alluded to there, is there's really no shortage of candidates at that entry level or that junior level trying to break into the field. The shortage of talent is really only in very specific subdisciplines of security, and usually very highly technical roles. So
Correct.
in my experience here in the US, the few skill sets that are really still in high demand would be like OT security, DevSecOps, cloud security, product security, stuff like that, versus GRC seems to be a little bit light. DFIR is also pretty in demand right now. Are you seeing something similar over there?
Yeah, kind of, because you're right. But there are some very specific needs which are emerging especially when you start looking at how quickly the cloud adoption is happening, the amount of OT technology is coming in and plugging in. It's a new field, and then generative AI. I think it's going to create a very different kind of demand of different kind of talent in terms of how do you go about embedding generative AI capabilities and still keeping security intact. So I think there is definitely a demand for some specific sectors where you see a more talent deficit. But again, coming back to the point, which is how are we going to create more talent in those space? By simply looking at, by offering more salaries and getting more people from the other companies, the numbers are shifting. Whereas you need to kind of start thinking about, if there is a talent deficit, skill deficit away in this market, how can we actually take some of our younger generation and skill them up and provide them the technical training and provide them the experience working alongside some of the experienced people, because that is what is going to solve the problem. Just by trying to hire somebody by giving them more salary from other places, I don't think that's a long-term solution.
I totally agree. Yeah, it's at least my experience has been that it's just a giant zero-sum game. If somebody's new hires somebody else's backfill. Correct. And it's like you said, it's just kind of a revolving door, especially in certain industries like consulting. So whether it's governance, risk, and compliance consulting or DFIR consulting, the firms have only ever wanted to hire from other firms. Nobody wants to build these pipelines to train people into these roles, because it does take a lot of investment and it does take a lot of time, and you really have to have an intelligent strategy to build these things. And I think a lot of people don't see it as a problem at the micro level, but it becomes a massive problem at the macro level, at the industry level.
Correct.
So what can we do, like, I guess, on an individual company or hiring team basis to build the business case to build some of these pipelines of folks?
See, you rightly touched upon the point of micro versus macro. I also believe all of us working in the cyber industry, we have an obligation towards this profession and the society at large. If we keep on looking at a micro level to say, okay, what do I need today? And I'm simply going and solving that problem by hiring somebody from elsewhere, we are not contributing towards the profession and the society the way I would like to see that happening. So example, when I look at my talent strategy, it's quite holistic. So my team, I always encourage my people to say, let's go and hire people who have got experience. So the thing is, it's important to make a distinction between skills when we talk about the skills. So even students who are doing masters or who have, and it's a lot of time when students do masters or bachelors, they have already got some experience and they build a lot of skills, analytical skills, problem solving skills. They are very super smart. They learn very quickly, and their exposure towards technology is a much higher compared to a lot of other, what I call they are digital natives. We are digital immigrants in that technology world. So there are a lot of skills they're carrying which are transferable that you can use. They may not have a very specific technical domain knowledge that you may want, and that can be supplemented very quickly by having a good training program, and it doesn't require a huge investment. But the productivity gains and the loyalty, the sense of purpose, the connection that when given an opportunity is a significantly higher. And what also it does is it also creates a very unique experience for your people to be able to almost like show ropes to a younger talent. It actually allows them to become a leader by taking care of and supporting them, and by teaching a younger generation. And that's a very rewarding experience when you do that. And when you create this dynamic of some of our fresh mind coming into the workforce with some of our experienced people, it actually creates a lot more engaging and productive environment. So my view is, when you look at this strategy, it's about, there's a lot of solutions available. Example, number of companies have come up and number of institutes have come up. They actually provide you trainings, where you can actually go and hire from them. They have a 3 or 4 months or 6 months program. When by the time you're hiring from them, they are pretty trained up. So you can outsource the training path that is needed, or you can also work with the institutes like SANS. You can work with ISC Square, or you can work with there's a lot of other institutions available in different countries where you can work in partnership to create that program to do that ramp up. And the advantage you will get, and I think somebody has to experience it, I have experienced it so many times. I have got a superbly talented team, a lot of young people, and they always amazes me whenever I engage with them. Their enthusiasm, their hunger, their drive, their motivation, it's infectious. And when we do that at the macro level, we start creating more cyber talent for the market, for the society, not just solving a problem that is in hand today, but actually solving the problem for tomorrow.
Yeah, you bring up a couple of great points there. One about transferable skills. I think sometimes there's a sense from the folks that are kind of anti junior hires or anti entry level hires. There's a sense that folks that are applying to those roles have zero skills, like they have zero transferable skills. I tend to be, in agreement with you that everybody has some sort of transferable skill. And there's a lot of intangible things that go into being a good security employee that can't be taught or don't necessarily show up in experience. Intellectual curiosity, for instance, that's something that somebody just has. And if somebody has that, they're going to, outpace somebody that doesn't have that trait very quickly. Even the person that has quote unquote exact experience for that type of role. So yeah, that's a great point. And you mentioned another good thing about how once you've experienced this dynamic where you're mentoring junior people and you can see what they really truly can do, it does open your eyes. I've been through it myself. I started a campus recruiting program at a consulting firm, and it was amazing how quickly people caught on and became revenue generating consultants for the company. I mean, it was within 6 to 9 months, these folks were operating at a way higher level than you would expect. Just being kind of thrown into it. And we didn't maybe have as much of a shadowing and training program as we should have. And they still did relatively well.
And Pete, the very important thing to keep in mind is, and I always focus on that, is, the intent, the values, the behaviors, the drive. These are the things which are intangible but very significant, that can't be taught. Technical skills can be taught. But if you're hiring for those qualities, people are going to flourish. And look at how our industry is shaping up. The face of security, what used to be around 10, almost 24 years ago when I started my career, it has changed completely. And with generative AI coming in, I think our technology landscape is going to change. The way we use technology is going to change. The way we operate as a society is going to change and connect, which means you may need completely different type of security skills. And so we always are learning constantly technical skills and everything else. But you rightly said, the curiosity, being able to solve the problems, being almost like willingness to dive deep into it, and then learning on the go. I think these are the intangible but very, very important values. And if you hire for those behaviors, for that mindset, for that curiosity, I think people flourish. I have got so many examples. I can tell you so many stories about it. And every time I tell those stories, it brings a smile on my face. I was in the office, last week when we had team event day, everybody coming across the UK coming to the office. And when I see those young faces who joined us 4 years ago, now becoming leaders, leading the team, it's such a rewarding experience. And the energy that is in the room, and when you talk to them, is highly infectious. I can't, you have to experience it.
Yeah, totally agree. I had some folks come through my campus recruiting program. Let's see, at this point, it was back in 2015, something like that. And now these folks are senior managers. I think one gal is a VP at a consulting firm now.
Brilliant.
And I always say there's no shortage or there's no shortcut to experience, which I think is important. Like you do need to have some of that time in seat, but over time, those intangible characteristics really, I think, serve as a differentiator between the folks that contribute a lot to the industry and the folks that contribute a little bit less. And another good point is AI. Like, do you think AI can maybe fill in some of those technical gaps?
Yeah,
where
I do.
If folks have the intangibles, they can fill in what they're missing potentially.
I personally think generative AI can be extremely useful in almost reducing the learning curve, because generally you have a steep learning curve. But with the right tool sets in generative AI, some of the stuff that I have seen is coming up can be huge supporter and facilitator in reducing that steep learning curve that is ahead of the people to learn. And that's where the advantage comes along, where while generative AI has a downside, it also has a lot of positive sides in terms of how we can leverage it properly. So I definitely think I think the mind is still opening up. We are still exploring different possibilities, but based on everything that I'm seeing, I think it can make a huge difference.
Yeah, we'll see how it shapes up. I guess you could say I'm a little bit skeptical of AI, and and I think part of that is due to the fact that the early iterations of mass market LLMs and stuff like that they have some pretty well known downsides like hallucinations and making things up. But I think obviously that'll get better as time goes on. Yeah. The pushback to that often then becomes, though, you need somebody that understands the fundamentals of technology well enough to be able to push back on bad outputs. So how do we ensure that folks are getting that fundamentals sort of background to be able to validate the outputs of these things and not rely too much on tooling, which I think a lot of folks that they first got their start in security years and years ago, they came up through IT. They're usually saying something like people need to have worked in IT, understand the technology fundamentals. That way, they're not just too reliant on tools. How do we square that circle, I guess?
So my view is, if you look at how technology advancements have happened. When I was younger, computers were just getting introduced, right? I remember those dial-up connections with the modems, when the speeds was almost just about there, where you can see the screen refresh happening, to going to high speed, and then smartphones were introduced, changed the way we connect as a society. I remember when I came to UK, we used to have a calling cards. So I will actually go to the phone booth and we will do the calling card, and the money is running out before you're having those international calls. Versus today, we can do FaceTime. You and me are having a podcast sitting across the pond, completely in different countries, and doing this in real time. So every technology advancements that has come along has changed the society, and there always have been positive sides to it and downsides to it. I think what we were just talking about, generative AI, we have to stay curious. The issue around disinformation, issue around hallucination, and everything else is absolutely spot on. I think that will be there. I don't think we can completely get rid of that, but staying curious, so we remain the user of the technology but do not become slave of the technology, is important. And this is one risk I see with technology like generative AI. It's very easy for us to get lazy. As you said, start relying on these tools and start trusting everything this tool is saying without verifying it. And if you get into that, if the society starts leaning into that laziness in the name of convenience, I think that's where the problem starts happening, because that's where technology suddenly takes over. And what we do not want to do is to technology take over. Technology has to be an enabler. We have to be the user and the master of the technology and not become slave of the technology.
Yeah, so it would seem like you would say maybe that to be an effective security professional, you almost need a healthy dose of skepticism.
Yes.
Not just to validate the findings of AI, but to second guess things that come across your desk from any source.
Yes.
Verify then trust, I think, is how it should be said.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But yeah, that's great. What about on the retention side? Obviously, you've built plenty of teams over the years. How have you managed to hang on to people when I think in modern society, people move jobs a lot more often and there's less investment from companies into employees? In that type of environment, it can be more challenging, I think, to hang on to people. So how do you do it?
Touchwood, I don't have a retention issue, honestly. I feel very honored and privileged with that. But there are a few, in fact, this is a topic we were discussing at team a few days ago. Um, what is retention? Retention is people leave because there is a reason for them to leave. And most of the time, pay is not the only thing. Either it's about intellectual growth, the work that you're doing, the purposefulness of that work, how you feel being part of the team. Can you see your career growing in the team? And can you see examples of others who have grown in the organization so that which can become role models? So there are so many things which comes to it. But more and more I have talked about it, thought about it, I have realized there is one essential ingredient which makes my team and our culture very different is psychological safety. We have been focusing a lot on that in the sense that how can we create an environment where whether you are an experienced person, a director level person, a senior manager to a graduate or joining us or a bright start after school who is joining us is an environment where everybody takes care of each other. There is no judgment. There is genuine interest to lean in and help and support each other. And anybody can ask whatever that you want to ask. You ask for help, you ask for support, and you do not shy away from being true self. You do not have to wear a mask on. And when you do that, what happens is you create an environment where people are learning from each other. Positivity is brushing upon each other. We have got a lot of examples. We run some training sessions every Friday where one person who's expert in one area will come and talk about it. Somebody started doing work in Gen AI security, coming and teaching each other. So we harness that curiosity, but create an environment where we're learning from each other. And when you start doing that, and also when you think about the talent pipeline, right? So I almost made a commitment to my team that we will be investing in our people. And whenever, as people are moving over the years, the talent pipeline, so most of my leaders are actually homegrown leaders, people who we hired from the university, or they came from outside early careers, people coming from different parts of the IT coming and working with us. So there's so much of emphasis in terms of how we hire the talent, how do we nurture the talent, and how do we create the environment where people can coexist and flourish. If you focus on these elements, retention is not a problem. Retention is all right. Retention is actually not a concern at all. And we also do this kind of thing where we check the employee engagement surveys and their results. I have never paid attention to it, and my scores are pretty high. The reason they are high, I don't do it because of those scores, and never even look at it. Sometime I don't even really honestly care about it. My focus is about people, focusing about our team, because it's a team sport. And when you do that, everything else is a byproduct. Productivity comes along, performance comes along. Focus on happiness, focus on taking care of each other, creating a psychological safe environment. Everything else falls in place.
Makes sense. Yeah. And I would imagine that to create what you say is a psychologically safe environment, a lot of that relies on trust between different layers of the hierarchy. So, you don't have senior managers talking down to senior consultants and stuff like that, where if there's, a good idea, it can be recognized. If it's not a great idea, explain why it's not going to work in this particular situation versus just shooting it down. And, from, I guess, like an authoritative sort of angle.
Yeah. And hierarchy doesn't need to exist in that fashion, to be honest. Example, I have this concept of virtual hallway. So I have a quite large team, but on Fridays, usually it's on Fridays because I have some time. I will just look at our org structure and just see somebody in different country or wherever I haven't spoken in a while, and I will see if they're free on Teams. I will ping them and say, "Hey, do you have 5 minutes for a quick chat?" And I just speak to them. And that person generally is not my person in my leadership team because I speak to them regularly. They're actually everybody else who are working at different levels. Connection. It's that connection that is important, because a lot of organization, a lot of teams, what exists is a transaction. And you do not need the transaction, because that's where you don't create a sense of belonging. You need the connection to, and when you do that, as I said, it's the hierarchy or structure is there for operational management, but team feel connected at all levels.
Yeah, and you make a good point about connection. I feel like in the modern day, as humans, we tend to feel more disconnected just because we're leveraging technology more than ever. We don't do, as many in-person events and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So those little just one-off sort of face-to-face interactions or what have you, I'm sure make a big difference in making somebody feel seen, essentially, like somebody cares. I think a lot of good management is more qualitative like that. It's not necessarily quantitative.
Nope.
That's why you're able to do so well with retention, not looking at the scores on the reports, but just talking to people.
Yeah. And that's where having laughters together, having fun together, creating those, when you talk about those social events, taking that connection to the next level, and sometimes reigniting the connection. Because what happens in this hybrid model, it is, I think it's amazing. It has given us so much of flexibility. So example, our colleagues who have got young kids, now they're able to drop them to school, pick them from the school. When they have a PTA meeting, they don't feel guilty about leaving the office or making those compromises. So hybrid work has created so many advantages, but the downsides also exist. And that's why when you're working remotely, having those connections, having those touch points and the events or meeting in person is so important, because before the connection starts to deteriorate, you need to go back and reignite that connection. You need to kind of reconnect at that level that you have. So, and I think that's where, and also, it's, if you think about it, what generally anybody wants from a job, they want what the work they're doing is fulfilling. So they need to know, even junior person needs to know how my work fits into the overall strategy and why it's making a difference. And I talk about this in my team, that we don't have a job, we have a mission. We don't have a job, it's a mission. Every day is a mission. And when you are aligned towards that common mission and vision, I think it makes it very worthy cause. And then you need to grow in the organization, and giving that clear growth path to people and showing them how they can grow, and then making that investment to make sure, whether it's training, learning from each other, or sometimes even small thing, giving permission to people that you do not need to work on weekend to do a certification or grow. There is a dedicated time every year that is given to people on self growth, whether that self growth is doing a new certification, or that self growth is about learning new technical skills, or learning a new business skills, or even mentoring somebody. Self growth is important. Everybody strives on that. And when you create that, and then you invest in people and show them the growth path, and they can see the talent pipeline moving, I think it creates a good experience for people, and that's what everybody wants.
Yeah, that's definitely a best practice. And I've seen that pay dividends for companies looking to retain people, is just allowing that time, say on a Friday, for somebody to study for a certification. Because I think often, especially for consulting firms where the focus is on utilization or billable hours, there's a sense that we just need to get as much billable hours out of you as humanly possible. And when that's the case, people feel used. They feel like, a number on a spreadsheet somewhere. Versus like a valued member of the team. And to your point about having a common mission, that seems to be kind of a through line for the best hiring managers I've worked with over the years. And I think a lot of them are former military, but not in like an authoritative sort of sense, but more we're all rowing in the same direction. I'm the leader, but I'm in the trenches with you. We have a common mission and we're driving towards it. Absolutely. People need to have purpose. And if you take the purpose out of their job and they feel no connection, that their work doesn't have any impact to the mission, then that's a good way for folks to feel, I guess, underutilized is probably a good way to say it. Yeah. So as far as you'd mentioned hybrid, obviously there's a lot of discussion about return to office and on-site and versus hybrid versus full remote. In my experience, at least in the US, a lot of folks are looking for full remote. But I've certainly seen that the market seems to be going the other direction, and more companies now are going either full-time in office or to hybrid. And there seems to be kind of a mismatch between what people want on average and what the jobs are offering on average. And with the previous guest, we kind of called it the expectation gap. I think the talent gap right now is really less of a talent gap. It's more of an expectation gap between, what people want and then what's available as far as open jobs. Any idea how we can remediate that when a lot of companies have like long-term office leases?
Yeah, it's a spot on thing. I think, and I will give you both answers from the macro perspective because I have a macro perspective also on this. I think when you look at a macro picture at the society level, it's not just about the long leases, but the overall society. When we go to the office, there are a lot of tier 2 and tier 3 businesses we support. So example, local sandwich shop, a coffee shop, hospitality industry, and everything else. And what happened in the COVID was a lot of those industries took a very bad hit where the jobs were impacted, the livelihoods were impacted, and everything else. So when all of us, and that's why I like to go to office every week for a few days as well, because I like to go to that local coffee shop outside my office, buy a coffee from the people who understands my preferences. They know, they look at me, they know what I want to buy. I like oat milk. I don't have normal milk. So and it's about we as the citizens of the country and the responsible member of the society. We're not just thinking about our job and everything else, but we're also looking at the wider picture and supporting the wide other industries which exist. So that's my personal that's my personal opinion, my personal view. But hybrid is so important because what COVID taught us, while we had some real tragedies during COVID and everything else, but what it taught us is there is a different way we can work, and we can work effectively and productively. And I think I would like to give the choice to the people. And that choice basically means, for example, I have a member of the team who just had a first kid. Now they're in a very different space in their life. And in that life, giving them opportunity to spend more time with the child when they are literally, when the new babies arrive, you're sleeping less and everything else. There's no good reason for me to tell that person that you have to come to the office when you haven't slept enough, taking the train ride, and then trying to rush back in the evening and everything else. So we need to recognize that circumstances different people have are different, and the needs people have are different, and creating a reason for them to come into the office, which is about social connection. There is a people are meeting, there is some work happening, a workshop happening, but coming to the office and having back-to-back meetings whole day and then adding on 3 hours of travel, it just doesn't feel right. So for me, it comes back to the same thing I was talking about, psychological safety and creating an environment where people can flourish. It's enabling that conversation and creating that environment where people can just say, this is my situation, or somebody may have a carer responsibility. One of my friend who lost his mother a long time ago, now his father is very old, and his father is going through some challenges, health challenges. Now, the organization needs to provide that right support system so he can take care of his father, who is in a very critical stage at this point. So for me, it's understanding that psychological safe space where you can say, these are my needs. How can we create the right model that works for everybody? Because I think when you do that, productivity is really high. And loyalty is very high. The sense of connection and the belonging is very, very high. So for me, I don't think there's one size fit for all in this case. But I do not believe that times where everybody has to come to office every day, I don't think that's right. I don't think flexibility gives us a better quality of life. Work is an important part of life, but work is not life. So
for sure. Yeah. And everybody has different priorities too.
Yeah.
Some people, they may love to be in the office every day.
Absolutely. I respect that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But then you also have folks that they wouldn't spend an hour in traffic if you paid them double what their salary is,
Yeah.
So yeah, I think like you said, the flexibility is key, and
Yeah.
and
And it also depends on job, Pete. Different types of jobs. For some jobs, you may have to come. For example, if you're a data center engineer and everything else, and there's something happened in a data center, so you have to go and fix something. It requires that for that. So different types of jobs allow. But my point is, at how talented somebody is, how good job they can do, everything else that can't be determined by whether you are doing that sitting in an office building or sitting at home. So it's
yeah. One thing I'll often see people say on LinkedIn is, all right, so why the mandate for 3 days a week in the office? If somebody can do the job remotely 2 days a week, why can't they do it from home 5 days a week? Why the seemingly arbitrary number of 3 days a week? So in my experience, it's not that people don't want to come into the office ever. It's that they don't want to be mandated to come into the office.
I fully agree with you. I think it creates a very different emotional reaction in your mind when you say you have to be in the office 3 days a week versus you have to be in the office as per the need. And you make those choices. Example, one team can work together and they say, oh, you know what? This week, we think we have to come to the office 4 days a week. Fine, we'll come because we are doing some workshops and doing some brainstorming and working on new ideas, and fine. So next week, I don't think we need to come more than one day because most of the work that we are doing doesn't require us to be in the office. So, but I completely agree with you. This whole notion of mandating it just creates a rebel. Try to mandate something to your teenager kid. You will know what I mean. So it's like, I think this comes back from what I agree with you. I think it's that saying mandatory has a sound to it which doesn't feel right.
Yeah, we're all just overgrown teenagers at the end of the day, I suppose.
We are indeed.
Yeah, there's some through lines, I think, from childhood to adulthood that our psychology stays the same across certain things like that. And I think the best hiring managers tend to work with human nature and not against human nature. I'm trying to think of other examples. I would say something like reward systems. People enjoy rewards and accolades, and they will avoid pain and conflict whenever possible, in my experience. And often the path of least resistance is the one that folks will take. So if somebody feels, to your point about psychological safety, if somebody feels like they're going to get a bunch of resistance or pushback on, bringing up an idea or a question, they're just not going to say anything.
Yeah.
And then they'll be quietly looking for the door.
I tell you what the leadership. I wrote a blog post recently, a LinkedIn post on this, and I was almost like, my summary of this was, leadership is a human endeavor, right? It's all about being human. We just try to create a persona and everything else, but what this is about, understanding humans, understanding the needs, understanding personalities. And all of us are different. My two kids are completely different. And we are three brothers, and all three of us completely different industry, different ways of thinking, but born from the same parents. And if we have different people who think differently, who are different, who have different priorities in life in the same family, your work team is actually a one big family. And understanding the human needs are different, all of us are different, and making a conscious effort to make sure people can coexist, thrive, and flourish. I think that's the goal. That's what it needs to be. And that's where I think, as a leaders, we really need to go extra mile. And there was another discussion I was participating in. We require a different type of leadership and different mind and different style to be a good leader in this climate and moving forward. Those days of traditional leadership are gone. You can't, it's not about managing people, it's not about telling people, it's not authoritative. Basically, it's very much about working as a team member with the people and having that mindset where you are able to lean in and provide the guidance when it's needed.
Yeah, fair enough. And obviously the generational dynamics and demographics and things play into that as well. How do you walk that line between needing to have and practice authority, but then also having more of that team-oriented mindset, as you mentioned? Like, how do you ensure that people are, respecting the authority of the leaders, but then also feeling like they're a part of the team.
Yeah, I think I focus on respect and not authority. For me, it's in my hand. My actions are in my hand. And I always say you have to earn the respect. I can't expect or ask for respect. I have to earn the respect. And my respect earned, that is based on my actions. So people I'm leading, do they respect me, or have I done enough to earn their respect? That's literally my job and that's my choice. Now, authority you do not need to exercise if people respect you, and as I said, you have open dialogue, open conversations where people understand the priorities and they're empowered to do things and they know exactly what needs to be done. And if you do not have the people who are empowered, who can run things, who can take the lead on things, then you obviously something is wrong with the hiring strategy. But it's about, one of the important part of leadership is the eye for the talent, hiring the right people, having that eye for the talent and growing the talent. And then once you have, then it's about empowering them and leaving it to them, and then just be there as a support mechanism when they need to be. So for me, I do not believe in the concept of authority. That should be the last resort. Pulling out the weight of your role should be the last resort. But uh, people following you because they feel inspired, because they respect you and they are willing to go extra mile for you, that's where the magic happens.
Yeah, and I would imagine trust plays into that as well. Your team needs to trust that you're making decisions as a leader in the best
Yeah,
interest of everyone, and not
absolutely.
just yourself.
Absolutely.
Which I think is something often when people are looking to leave a company or a team, it's because the old saying, "People leave bosses, not companies." Absolutely think it's true, and it seems like half the time it's because folks don't feel listened to. Like you mentioned before, rarely is it actually about the money. Usually, if money becomes the conversation, it's a symptom and not the root issue of someone looking to move on. How do you work around? You mentioned hiring the right people and having a good, progression path or promotion path for them. How do you lay that out for somebody in the beginning and then throughout their career?
Yeah, so I think for me, it's about, again, comes back to the honest conversation, right? I always tell my people, be patient with your career, because sometimes that impatience, so I need to, and also a lot of times we start measuring our success in relation or in reference to somebody. It's a career is a long term game. It's not a short term game. And you have to look at elapsed time over. So somebody may make a progress in 2 or 3 years, and then may not make progress for next 3 years, but somebody else may make a progress every 2 years. It's that everybody's on a different journey, a different path, and not everybody wants to be a leader. That's also important to understand. You have to respect. Some people do not want to become a people leader or a manager. They're very happy being the technical expert who they are. And that's where you need to have two things separate, which is a technical career pathway, which is very, very important for your engineers, for your operators, incident responders who are working, and then a career pathway for the leadership, which basically means you are not just contributing individually or part of a team, but you are actually leading a team of individual contributors towards one common mission, common objective. So when you lay down that path, it's about identifying, as I always said to you, right? Those skills, those behaviors, those business behaviors, I call them business essential life skills. Having that eye for saying, okay, who is a natural person who works really well with the people, who doesn't get flustered in a difficult conversations? Because whenever you are leading a team of people, not every time is going to be easy. You will have challenging situations, challenging people, challenging circumstances, and everything else. So how do you deal with that? Do you have an empathetic mindset? Do you have the respect of the people around you who will be look to follow you? They feel inspired with you? So, and who has got different types of, so aligning people to the strengths, and sometimes also explaining to them what they are good at. And especially when you are junior, and even when I was growing up in my career, honestly, I would have loved if somebody just sat down with me saying, you are really good at this, focus on this, or you're not really good at this, don't worry about it, but I think this is the right career pathway for you. So having that conversation and providing the guidance and having a dialogue, I think that's where it's important. And once you have that, And then you can tell them, example, if today somebody is a consultant or senior consultant, sh- tell them what are the goals and objectives they need to hit. What are the stretch goals and objectives? So set up some stretch goals for them, and then provide the support as you go along. And then everybody, over the time, everybody progresses. And not just that, when they see the talent pipeline progressing around them, I think they can see, it creates a healthy competition, and it kind of creates that environment where people are, learning from each other and pushing each other in a positive way.
Absolutely. Yeah. You make a good point about movement, not just for the individual, but elsewhere in the team. I could see where in some situation that might work against the person that wants to get promoted, say, and if they're not getting promoted, they may feel a little bit resentful. How do you approach that person and adjust expectations while also keeping the focus on the positive in the future and keeping them looking forward?
So one thing I will also want to say, Pete, and I don't believe in the concept of employment for life also. So, just like my kids, my elder one, left school, left home, went to university, and then he's going to have a first job, that job might be in a different place. So in a way, his wings became bigger, and the time came when he had to fly the nest, to explore himself, to explore the horizon, to find out how high he can fly, how far he can fly on the journey. I can't, in the self interest, or just out of that love, I can't. It's not fair for me to kind of stop him from doing that. And the same principle applies in the workforce, in the work family as well, which is, you know you some people will have a longer career with you, and they will see the path, and they will be patient and everything else. Some people may not be that patient and may want to fly quicker, and they grow faster, and you can't provide them the growth, because every organization dynamics, it's not possible for everybody to become, example, everybody become a director, everybody become senior manager or whatever. So in some cases, the right outcome is, now you have grown up enough, and now it's time for you to fly the nest and see the horizon, see what's out there. And then at some point you come back to the nest, you come back home as well, which is, and I believe in that philosophy, that it's not about trying to you know keep people against their will and whatever, but keep them because they want to be here, because they believe in the mission, they believe in what you're trying to do, and they're patient with that and understand the organizational construct. But if there are some people, as you to answer your question, they see others progressing and everything else, and they want to know. And again, it comes down to having those well-defined objectives, well-defined criterias, explaining to them what those stretch objectives looks like. And in some cases, if you think there is no possibility because organizational construct, or example, team is not growing, the headcount is not growing or whatever, and you can't have that, having the honest conversation, saying, but I know you have potential. I know you're doing great, but we cannot do this I can only do it in next 2 years' time. It may not happen next year. But having that honest dialogue is important, because what you're doing is you're being very honest with the person, and you're putting and giving them all the information they need so that they can make an informed choice. And if that choice might be that they end up leaving the organization, it's fine. It's a great, you had a great run, you had a great relationship, you be professional with each other. And I have so many boomerangs, people who go and then they come back after some time. So that's what it is this honest, clear, transparent conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. And I imagine you had that conversation with somebody and you think there's a chance that, maybe they do fly the nest. You can let them know, hey, if that's the plan, just please let me know and we can work together to, backfill your position. That type of transparency and honest dialogue, I feel like is so rare, because it seems like, my experience as a recruiter has been, well, granted, I guess there's a bias towards people that are unhappy that are willing to take a call from a recruiter. So that's probably why I hear a lot of folks that are, relatively unhappy. But it's often, I feel like I'm not going anywhere. Nobody will tell me what I need to do. I don't know what it's going to take to get a promotion. In some cases, it is because the organization is top heavy. And in my experience, that tends to happen quite a bit in consulting firms for whatever reason. I suppose that's a topic for another day. But we're actually coming up on time, believe it or not. So just one last question for you. Is there anything that we're not talking about in the industry, but we should be, especially as it relates to hiring?
There is still a gap in the industry where I'm not going to talk about experienced hires. I think experienced hires, again, when we hire people, one still problem I see is job descriptions are very heavy about the skills and experience and everything else, which again discourage a lot of people to apply for the roles. So I I think we are creating it's a very copy paste version of different profiles I see. And I think that's where I would like anybody who's listening, I would encourage them to say, even if you do not hit the 90% of the profile and everything else, apply and have a conversation. And I would encourage hiring managers to open up their minds to the skills which are transferable skills and focus on that quite a lot and make sure that you're doing it. And secondly, I would I really hope everybody who's working in the security industry start spending some time with students. Um, because when you think about when you were in the university, sometimes we forget a world of cyber looks very fancy, it looks very complex, and looks amazing from outside. But within cyber, you talked about so many different jobs. There's so many different pathways are available, and for people coming from outside, they do not know what those pathways are. They do not have insights. They do not know what skills are required, whether technical or not technical. How can they enter into that area? Because I'm a big believer that if you align what you do to your strengths, magic happens. And if you get stuck into GRC role, whereas you thrive on technical work, then it's a mismatch, and then you get stuck. So engaging and providing that insights is important, and helping. If somebody reaches out to us, I always pay attention when somebody reaches out to say, hey, I would like to have a little bit of time to get your guidance. Fine, give it back to the community. This profession, this community, and this industry has given us so much. It's so important for us to give it back in that context, and think about what would have helped us when we were starting our career. If we didn't get that help, it's our duty to provide that help. And I think if we do that, we will solve the talent crisis, talent deficit, all that kind of a problem, or even mental health and all those issues. Because if people are doing what they love, they have a sense of purpose. As I said, it's not a job, it's a mission. I think productivity is higher, people feel happy, well-being is a good place. And I think that's just what makes it exciting for us.
Absolutely. And there's so many places to find mentees these days. There's so many Discord channels and subreddits and specialty websites. Like there's aboutdfir.com that a lot of DFIR folks spend time on. There's just all these little corners of the internet where all these really bright, young and career transferring folks are existing. And there's just not enough people stepping up to the plate to mentor these folks. And like you said, they really don't know what they don't know, because I don't know that all the educational institutions are doing as good of a job as they could be in educating folks about all the different subdisciplines of security. There's just so many. And until you talk to a professional that's been in that subdiscipline of security, you really don't understand what the day-to-day is like.
Yeah. And my view is, I don't like to blame academia, because they're doing what they know best or what they can do, because changing a curriculum takes years in that process. But that's where the partnership is important. Industry and academia partnership is so important, because it's our job to bridge that gap that exists in the academia. And then we can create a wholesome experience for a younger generation. So that's why we have to lean in and not just rely on the university to do their part. And it's a collaboration. It's a partnership.
Makes sense. Great point. Well, appreciate your time, Jit. If people want to find you online or, keep up with the work that you do, what's the best way to do so?
LinkedIn. I am not much on social media. I'm basically on LinkedIn, but I'm starting a new YouTube channel. We started doing some work on the Ask the CISO series. specifically around students. And because I get to be speaking to a lot of people who are coming from other industry or university, they want to join cyber, but they do not know how, they do not know what type of roles available. So we have done some interviews with example, some of my younger generation team members, like pen testers, like somebody who's working in governance, to explain to other people so they can listen in, to say what's their experience like, what it means to be a pen tester, what it means to be an incident responder. And the hope is we can bridge that gap and provide those insights to the people who are trying to come from outside to pursue the career in cyber, so that they can make informed and right choices.
Awesome. Well, you're certainly doing your part, and I'll put the link to that in the show notes, as well as your LinkedIn profile. Well, appreciate your time, Jit, and thanks everybody.
Thanks, Pete.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Talent Gap Fireside Chat. Don't forget to follow our page on LinkedIn and like and subscribe on Spotify and YouTube. Hit that notification bell to be notified when we drop a new episode. New episodes air every Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern.